Okay, so the idea for this series of videos came from my utter boredom being locked at home during the coronavirus pandemic this year. I'd long since run out of Netflix shows to binge, and I was turning to learn to roller skate as a way of procrastinating my university work. I'm in my first year of a bachelor degree studying graphic design and film studies, and even though these are both areas that I love and I enjoy making things for, I couldn't help but feel that I was lacking creativity and becoming increasingly restless in this monotonous day-to-day life. So I had a crazy thought. As a way to rejuvenate my creative brain and give me something to work towards, I am going to be watching every single film created, produced, or distributed by the A24 film company. Now, I am no stranger to a movie marathon, but this seems like an insane task. I mean, I was going to learn to roller skate, how much crazier can I be? And along with this insane idea, I thought of documenting it just as a way to keep me motivated, because knowing my track record with projects like this, I'll get to the third video and I'll just dump it. But this also gives me something to look back on in future years and show my progress with my film analyses and all the fancy words that go with that. This isn't a really new idea, like people have done it before, and it's called the very original name, the A24 Marathon. So I'll be watching each film and sharing my thoughts, feelings, first impressions, just as a way to create a discussion and hopefully inspire some of you guys to watch a movie that you'd never heard of or never thought you would have liked. Each video on this channel will be a separate film in the list, and there may be a few spoilers, so just a heads up, don't come for me. These videos are my opinions, and I'm in no way a film critic or anything professional by that means. I just really like movies and I just wanted to share my thoughts on them. Also, please be nice in the comments when sharing your thoughts. This is a safe space and it's just meant to be a fun thing, so don't get too hostile. But before we dive into the first film of the marathon, I thought it would be a good idea just to give a little brief background into what A24 actually is. So A24 is an American independent entertainment company that was founded in 2012 by Daniel Katz, David Finkel, and John Hodges. They mainly involve film distribution and film and television production. But the reason why I love them so much is that their filming style is that there is no filming style. This company was created to push boundaries for filmmakers, and this resulted in strange, out-of-the-box ideas, so each film is very different to the next film. And it also gives directors and screenwriters the opportunity to make the films that they want to make, rather than compromising and settling for a cardboard cutout film with a big film production company. Some of the films you might be familiar with by them are Lady Bird, Hereditary, Ex Machina, and The Disaster Artist. So as you can see, there really isn't anything connecting them other than A24. Now, I've seen quite a few films by A24, and I respect them so much for just doing what they want to do. And this can result in amazing Oscar-winning films, but can also produce some really shit ones as well. And speaking of shit films, let's get on to the first film of this marathon, A Glimpse into the Mind of Charles Swan III. This film is written, produced, and directed by Roman Coppola and was initially released in 2012, with a cast including the likes of Charlie Sheen, Catherine Winnick, Bill Murray, Jason Schwartzman, and Patricia Arquette. Set in a loose 1970s period, the narrative surrounds Charles Swan, a successful graphic designer who has just been dumped by his girlfriend Ivana because she had found a bunch of pornographic Polaroids of all of his exes, already off to a great start. He starts to spiral as he questions whether he actually loves her, hates her, or just wants a relationship. Charles begins experiencing fever dreams of past relationships, which makes him question his position even further, and as he hits rock bottom, he attempts to patch things up with Ivana. Now, I'd never heard of this film before making these videos, but as soon as I saw that Charlie Sheen was the leading actor, I had immediately lost all hope for this film, and the reviews that I had seen of this film kind of just proved my hunch.
Shut up, I am filming a video. Too bad, bitch.
I desperately wanted to go into this with an open mind because I'd just seen Uncut Gems, which made me think of Adam Sandler in a totally different light and actually made him look like a serious and professional actor. But Charlie Sheen was Charlie Sheen. Now don't get me wrong, there are some redeeming qualities in this film, emphasis on some, but most of the writing and timing was just off and so weirdly done. Coppola writes a lot of screenplays for Wes Anderson, and you might recognise him for being the brains behind visually stunning films such as The Grand Budapest Hotel, Fantastic Mr. Fox, and Isle of Dogs. So I was expecting some kooky, weird shit in this film. I mean, it got weird, but not the good kind of weird. A lot of the problems that I found with this film, the majority of them could have been fixed in the writing. It's strangely paced, and a lot of the characters, basically all of them, were just so one note and didn't have much depth in them. We, as the audience, are meant to sympathise with Charles, but there wasn't really anything to go off. When we are first introduced to him, his brain is filled with images of drugs, alcohol, gambling, and naked women, which is actually one of the things I hate with this film, but I'll touch on that later on. As I said before, there's nothing really there to help us sympathise with Charles. I mean, he does help others, like smashing the window of the publishing company for his sister, but it almost seems half-assed. The supporting characters weren't that much better either. Ivana is a young blonde actress from a small country town. Like, she literally says, "I'm just a small town girl," like she's a fucking Rick Springfield character. Like, you can't get more cliche than that. Charles's best friend Kirby is supposedly a very successful comedian, but all of his jokes are like 2010 humour. Like, remember when Beans was a funny meme? Like that. Not only are the characters cliched, but the main plot is as well. I was so close to stopping the film because I thought that Ivana would take pity on Charles and they would get back together. He is so obviously an asshole, and she deserved so much better. But the one thing that is absolutely criminal for film is that I don't remember any of the characters' names. Like, the only way that I remember them is looking them up after the film and when I'm preparing for this video. Now, another thing that I touched on before that I found really weird was the timing and how the narrative was structured. There are constant interruptions in reality as Charles reflects on past relationships through stylized fever dreams, which I found to be really jarring at the start, but I actually really enjoyed them, and to be honest, I wish there was more. But the thing that I realised as I was preparing for this video was that I actually just preferred the look of them than the actual content within the scenes. So they kind of became loosely connected skits that didn't really fit in the film. Now, I realised that Coppola probably had a lot of ideas of how he was going to represent these dreams, but it honestly feels like he couldn't choose one, so he just mashed them all together. All of the elements around Charles I could see was trying to make him look like this quirky, interesting character, but really it just looked like extra things that were added on to Charlie Sheen's completely blank slate. Also, as a side note, there is so much symbolism in this film, and I'm all for symbolism if it's used correctly. But this just felt like the film was treating the audience like they were idiots. Like, ooh, he's throwing her bag of shoes off the cliff, but it's stuck in the tree, so that means he's not over her. That kind of bullshit. Okay, I feel bad that I've been shitting on this film so much, because there are some redeeming qualities. Like, the contrast between the depressed reality and the stylized dreams, that was great. I just wish there was more of that. And it kind of needed to look a bit more integrated into his perspective. Some of my favourite bits of this film were the dream sequences. Like, the use of colour was so stylized and it really made these scenes really interesting to watch. And the over-the-top acting was really funny. But I just wish that they could have leaned more into it. Coppola is an expert in this, so I'm just confused why he didn't bring that to this film. Another thing I loved was all the supporting actors. They were all so talented and they did great with what they were given. But I feel that they didn't get enough screenplay to properly show their characters. Bill Murray's reveal was the best part of the entire film. And even though I hated on her before, Ivana was one of my favourite characters because Winnick did so well with the character. But there really wasn't enough time to flesh out these characters more. Although, I do not want this film to be any longer because watching 20 minutes of this felt like I was sitting there for an hour. I think the only character that I truly loved was Coco the toucan. Like, in my notes as I was watching this, I had in all caps, he has a toucan called Coco. I'm just so annoyed because there are obviously some good bits, they just needed to be brought out a bit more. And then there is the absolute abomination that is Charlie Sheen. This was obviously meant to be his comeback film after so many years on the back burner, but it didn't turn out as well as he would have hoped. This is just the same character that he always plays and kind of reflects him and his standing in Hollywood. He's just so creepy in this. He is always wearing a fedora and sunglasses, even at night, and he's basically chasing his ex-girlfriend the whole movie. The scene of him crying to Ivana was so bad that it's hilarious. So I think that Sheen was probably one of the worst choices you could have got for this role. He needed much more variation in his character. Like, he's great at the sleazeball act, but his character lacked the sensitivity that the audience needed to truly sympathize with him. It really needed someone that could bring that sense of charm and had a greater variety of emotional range. Like, think Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He has the same kind of arrogant character, but he just adds so much more to it because he brings that sense of vulnerability to the character that is much needed, making it a much more genuine performance. One thing I wanted to address that I think that this film does very poorly is the representation of women. I know that this was made in 2012 and it was obviously a very different time for women in the media then, but I couldn't help but feel uncomfortable and really appalled at how we as women were being represented in this film. I understand that this is meant to be from Charles' perspective, who's a sex-obsessed douchebag, but it doesn't excuse the fact that within the first few minutes of this film, there are women lying in very sexualized positions with no clothing. I don't want to go on a full-on rant, but I just think that this should have been brought up. Well, on that very depressing note, that was what I thought of A Glimpse into the Mind of Charles Swan III. Overall, I wouldn't really recommend this film. Like, it has some okay moments, but mostly the film is just kind of confused of what it wants to be. I really hope you enjoy this little review. Remember that these are just my opinions. You might have very different opinions to me, and I would love to hear what you guys thought down in the comments. And just a quick little self-promotion, I stream on Twitch every Wednesday night, Friday night, and sometimes Monday nights in Australian time, so if you feel like it, come join me over there. It's Sammy Jade. And watch me fail at video games and laugh at my expense. Also, feel free to subscribe, like, and leave your comments of what you thought of this film or any other suggestions that you could have for me. So that's all for now. I will get on to the next film and I will see you in the next video.
Woo! One done.